Welcome to Alger Podcast, episode 30. I can't even believe we're at episode 30 already. It's been such a fun ride, man. Before we get into it with my guest, I got a few announcements I wanted to make. One is I've got a new YouTube channel. So I'm going to be dropping episodes about once a month to start with. It'll grow from there, I'm sure. But check it out. If you're listening on audio, check it out on YouTube. We've got several videos going up there. Second one is I'm working on a newsletter. So I've got a newsletter coming up that you'll be able to get information about upcoming events, different courses that I'm teaching, things like that. I just finished recording a course on reading people. So that comes from a few different spaces, but a lot of it comes from the stuff that I learned playing poker. So there's some body language stuff in there. There's some personality stuff in there. It's 12 different modules. They're all about 3 to 5 minutes long. So it doesn't take too long to get through it, but it's real powerful information. That right now is being edited by my good friends at Greenlight Studio. So once that is available, then I will, I'll let you know, or you can get some information on that from my website, which is algercoaching.com. That's ALGER, algercoaching.com. Today, I got with me my good friend Dan Mora. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been good, man. We've known each other just for about a year now, and have found that we have a ton of stuff in common. So I'm looking forward to unpacking that. One of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about was the reason that I started this podcast. What got it started was a friend of mine and we were sitting at lunch together. And we'd been there an hour or something like that. We're sitting at a restaurant, and he's in high level leadership. We kind of came through a similar path together, and just the conversations that we had, which was really normal in the business world, the things that we were talking about. It just occurred to me that when I was 25 years old, when he was 25 years old, how cool it would have been to just sit at that table and listen to what we were talking about. And of course, he and I know exactly what the struggles that we had to go through to learn the things that we learned to get to the spot that we were in. And man, I would have done almost anything to sit at a table with two people with 20 some odd years of leadership experience. And I just, of course, thought, well, how can I recreate that? And so and how can I give back? And that was the beginning of kind of the podcast thing. And I was thinking about that because one of the things that you and I connected on is exactly that same thing. Like the conversations that we've had, which is what we're going to try to, sort of not recreate, but we're, recreate that structure. The conversations that we've had, I mean, if you think about like what that would have meant to you, to me, when I was, it means a ton to me right now.
Yeah. Things have changed. When we're kids, our access to these things were far less. I say kids, but when we're in our 20s, making the mistakes, the real mistakes.
Right.
For sure. So access. And I've had, I think all of us that have achieved some level of success were like, wow, I would love to talk to myself when I was, that age, younger, even, in my opinion.
Right.
So I have a passion for giving back. I think even as early as I think the school system is kind of, needs some help to infuse business concepts and that sort of thing. But junior high school, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I wonder if I would have listened to me, though.
That's the question. That's the question.
I could have stood right in front of me.
Probably not. It'd be one of those, 2%, grad type of things. Yeah.
I may not have even known, what I was talking. I don't know. I was pretty stubborn back in the day, but like I said a little bit earlier, you and I have known each other for about a year. Mm-hmm. So I've gotten to know you a little bit. Our audience obviously hasn't. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Founder, CEO of local business Gemini Legal. We're statewide, but headquartered in Rockland, and about 300 employees. So we're doing some good stuff.
300 employees is incredible. And how long have you owned?
We're coming up on 20 years. In a month, we'll be 20 years old. Yeah. So.
Wow. 300. I mean, that's, a lot of people don't realize. I mean, when you're starting out in leadership, you're trying to lead yourself well. You're trying to lead other people, usually a smaller group. But when you're leading people that lead people that lead people that lead people that lead people,
Yeah, I take it.
It gets complicated quick.
It does. It does. And for sure yeah, you have to take it serious, I think, is the way that I think about it. These folks, every one of my employees, I personally take ownership of, that I am in a position. My job, my role is to help and guide to some degree.
Yeah. Well, how did you get your start? I really like that mindset, and what I mean by that is there's no shortage of people who want to go start their own business. There's no shortage of people who want to do things and yet do nothing with it. Right? Yeah. They don't ever take that first step. Like how did you start? How did what's that story?
So the story, I grew up in a really entrepreneurial family, so that I think set me in a direction that there's some fear there. I think people, why they don't jump, why they don't make the leap into business ownership, is there's just a little bit of uncertainty and fear, maybe a lot of uncertainty and fear. I work with young entrepreneurs, and one in particular I'm thinking of, I have in my mind that just their risk tolerance is to the point where they just aren't ready to take the leap. And it's a leap of faith that you take. And to be honest, like now in at this age, I'm not sure if I would have taken that leap, because it is very risky. It's a lot of, a lot of hard work. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and don't have any problem working for people and working with people. I went to the Air Force right out of high school.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. It's my pleasure, honestly. And getting out, I was going to join my family business. My dad's a chiropractor.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I was going to be a chiropractor, but
you have that chiropractor look about you.
Oh, thank you. You're very calm, right?
Yes. Yeah. Very attentive.
Yeah. Big family chiropractors. My grandfather, great grandfather, uncle, great uncle, all chiropractors. So it was like that was going to be the thing. But when I got out of the Air Force, the school and I didn't get along super well. So I was just doing a lot of things. I was working for, my brother had a successful business at that time. So I was working for him, and it was a home service type of business. I was going to school. I was pre-med, just continued on pre-med, just at a pace that was I wasn't sure what was going to happen. It's working graveyard shift and at Home Depot. And then I had started a very small business doing blinds, cleaning, sales. I borrowed money from my grandma to get an ultrasonic blind cleaning machine, and went headlong into that. And that was the reason that I ended up where I'm at, is because I was doing that. It was not working out. And in retrospect, when we could talk about that, I was just wrong marketing plan altogether, 100%.
And how old are you at this point?
Shoot, I was 24.
Okay.
24.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I got introduced to the industry I'm in now, and it just immediately intrigued me. It was business to business.
Now, let's talk a little bit just for clarification. Yeah. So Gemini Legal is what? What do you do?
Yeah, good question. So we help attorneys, California attorneys that are representing injured workers. We help them just get the evidence for their cases.
Okay.
So we generate, serve subpoenas that are served on custodians of record, mostly medical record custodians, to get medical records so that the attorney can work up their case. We've been doing that, now for 20 years, but we also do a couple of other things. We provide vocational rehabilitation counseling to injured workers, which is a super cool thing that we do. But we also provide a pretty important electronic filing software for the entire industry that's free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So that doesn't sound like something you just decide to do one day. You probably
it was a friend
eased into it.
Yeah, a friend of a friend. I was funny story, but I had the kind of the party house in town. I had a bunch of roommates, and then it was like just happened to be a block from the bar. So a friend of a friend was like, "Hey, I see you're kind of industrious guy, and you got your own business. I got a business too. You want to check it out?" I was like, "Sure." And again, I was immediately intrigued by the business to business, the professional services aspect, working with attorneys. And so I jumped in. I started serving subpoenas and scanning medical records. out in the field, had a route, moved into management very quickly. And then once I kind of felt like I got that, there was an opportunity in the sales side of things. I jumped into that. And that's when really things started to really kind of take off for me in this arena.
Uh-huh.
I love human behavior. I study it, pretty diligently. And so sales, as you probably know, and audience may know, that it's important that you understand people when you're trying to serve their needs.
Right.
What do you need? Mr. Client, what do you need? Let's be really specific about that. And then having, dragging that out of people sometimes, and then making sure you can deliver on that.
Yeah. And I talked earlier about dropping, a course on reading people, and that's a piece of it. It's not set up to be manipulative and take advantage. It's just set up to, how do we serve people better?
Yeah.
And when you understand people, you can understand how to serve them better, and just, like you did, you find a niche and fill it.
Yeah. I think that it's funny that you say manipulation, because I think that people, I think that manipulation is the corrupted version of influence.
Yeah. We had a discussion about a month ago about the fine points of manipulation, and because people dress a certain way, you're wearing a polo with your logo on it we were throwing back and forth influence versus manipulation.
Yeah.
Because we and the problem is we look at the word manipulation in a negative sense, which is kind of where we were splitting hairs.
Sure.
And so society, looks at the word manipulation in a negative sense, because that's in our conversation, that's generally how it's presented. So I like your idea of going with influence as opposed.
And I worked for a competitive company for a couple of years, and then situations where I'm fine working with anybody. I'm a good number two, but I have the entrepreneurial kind of spirit, and the company wasn't really satisfying my drive for growth.
Yeah.
And they had some issues at the time. And so it was time. And
so let's talk about that for a minute, though, because so you're recognizing that the company that you're working for isn't providing you what you need. Now, in that space, there's a desire to start your own business. There's a desire to be an entrepreneur and do your own thing. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of fear, right? And we talked a minute ago about that. And the fear is usually fear of procrastination, things like that are usually what stops people. What pushed you through that? Like what was that like? Do you remember what that was like? I mean,
I do.
Can you pay the rent? Can you pay the bills? Like, you still got a car payment probably, you got to feed the family,
Yeah, I did some real basic risk calculations, and I like to actually promote that as something that all entrepreneurs should have in their mind, like a back of the napkin way of approaching everything when it comes to risk. Uh-huh. And I knew that I had basically what it took to start something, and that at that age was almost enough.
Right.
And I've another tip per se, I didn't really have a lot of fear. The way I grew up was very meager. We just didn't have anything. Uh-huh. My father was supporting 5 kids on his own, and putting himself through college at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So it was a tough.
So he wasn't a chiropractor when you were young then. He was
right. He graduated, I think when I was like 11 is when he graduated and started his own business.
Oh, okay.
So around that time, things, I would say, kind of took a turn when he graduated college and started his own business, but he was still working 2 jobs after that. So yeah.
Wow.
So because of that,
wow.
I mean, we grew up really meager. I mean, very, you know how it works, one set of shoes at a time, and, one pair of jeans at a time, a couple of shirts if you're lucky. And then, so I really didn't have any fear about being poor. I just didn't. So I'm thinking in my mind at the time, all right, this is risk. I get it. But I kind of get the back of the napkin. If I can make it successful, it's going to be all right.
Right.
Things are going to be okay. At the time, I had bought a house. I had a new wife. I had actually a child on the way. So things were not easy.
Yeah.
But I just knew that the hustle, if I wasn't going to make money at my startup, I was going to go work at Home Depot if I had to.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just not really afraid of hard work.
Just a willingness to hustle.
Yeah.
And a confidence in knowing that, you've got options.
And no plan B. So really options wise was like, yeah, I could go get a job.
Yeah.
Okay, I could go get a job.
Yeah.
That there's not much planning that needs to happen to just go get a job.
Make a resume and start.
Walk into Home Depot. I have construction background, walk into Home Depot. Hey, could you put me to work? And no problem. I'm not afraid. I've had kids approach me. I did youth group for a few years, and kids approach me like, "Oh, I'm worried about getting a job." Like, look, if you know how to just work, you're all right. You will always find something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's interesting you say that, because even in tough job markets, which currently we're in a pretty tough job market, it's harder to find jobs. If you're a hustler, you're going to find work.
Hustlers always find work.
Everybody's looking for a hustler.
Hustlers always find work.
And and I'm thinking about something that's interesting to me about some of the different generations, and I don't get too much into that, but there are some differences, and I hate the blame game that happens with it, but I do like discussing some of the differences. And when I was managing, one of the things that when I was managing on a regular basis, boots on the ground, one of the things that I noticed was my generation, we were taught, and we did do the work first.
Yeah.
And then the reward comes later. Mm-hmm. Now, the younger generations often have the opposite kind of thought and feel of pay me to do the work, and then I'll work hard. I'm telling you, man, if you aren't one that puts in the effort on the front side, you're going to struggle. Nobody's going to want to promote somebody that is only going to work to what they view the pay range, right? And that sounds crazy. It sounds like I'm advocating for, people to do free work. And the interesting thing is I am, because it will pay off in the end.
Right. If you have that mindset.
Yeah. You're your own brand.
Yeah.
You're your own brand. So if you're in the work, but wherever it is that you are, if you treat yourself as your own brand, and you treat yourself as, like Nike treats itself, or other big entities, they understand that their reputation matters, and it really matters. And one opportunity leads to another when you're a hustler,
Yeah. I think you have to take personal responsibility for your life, meaning if you're in a position, if you're in a job that they're not paying you what you feel is the work that you're doing, like, you have the right, and you should leave. You should leave or figure it out. Don't just sit there and, bemoan your situation. That's the worst.
Yeah. That's what I think it was John Maxwell that said it. It's not an IQ test. If you hate your job, quit.
Yeah.
Like if you love it, I mean, stay with it. Like, there's plenty of people who make tons of money in jobs and things like that. We're not really talking, about the other, people that just put the minimum into it. I'm always so curious about the mentality that it goes into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
That's always, and the go from nothing to something. That's the gap of, you got a new wife, you said, a baby on the way, the pressure to go from making nothing to making something it can be pretty intense. And so
you hustle.
Yeah.
That's good motivation. I like that kind of motivation in my life. I have a vision for my life. And I think that's actually probably one of my first things when I work with entrepreneurs is we have to start with vision. If you can't visualize this, if it's not crystal clear, this goes back to Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill,
right.
Top 5 of every business reading list out there. And it just basically says that you make a really clear vision, and every action should be focused on that. And you can't not succeed with that formula, in my opinion.
Yeah. So step one for you is create the vision.
I think so.
So if you decide you're going to start your business, what's it going to be? There's your rough starting point. Then what?
It's got to be enough to compel you to jump.
Yeah. Yeah.
The jump is not easy. Like, it is a risk. It's for most of us, it's like, a committed relationship with your spouse. This is forever. It could be forever. Maybe it should be forever. Really, though, I think like that kind of commitment it just has to happen. You have to jump and say, hey, this is plan A. And there is no plan B. Plan B, I'll figure it out. Like plan B is easy. Plan A, this is the hardest thing I can do, the most challenging thing that I can do. So I have to give it everything.
Now there's a lot of talk in a lot of different books and media and things like that about finding your why.
Yeah.
How important is finding your why when you're on that journey?
That's an interesting question. It's a great question. And I think it's just a really, really good question. My perspective, I don't know if it's unique, but it is, my why was pretty simple in the respect that I had a vision, though I had a vision for my life, and business was the vehicle. Whatever business I happened to be in at the time, was the vehicle to achieve that. I think though what you're speaking to is, find your why and then build a business around it. And that's basically what I did. But there's a lot of talk about like your passion and how your why and your passion should be what your business is kind of surrounded around. I honestly didn't find passion in my industry for many years.
Really?
For many years. Like the idea of providing medical records to attorneys for injury cases, to me just was, this is a vehicle.
Okay.
Over time though, and in some moments, I actually found really a lot of purpose in what we do now. Huge amount of purpose. I mean, people that get injured at work, I'm not saying legitimately injured, I'm not the judge. I'm not trying to be the judge. My goal is to get the truth on the table. Our job is to get truth on the table so people can get taken care of. It's very sad because it's a big system and people get lost a lot.
Right.
There's the folks that are very good at advocating for themselves, and they do fine. They make it through the system just fine if they have a work injury. But the people that have a hard time advocating for themselves, that's a really tough road.
Yeah.
So I feel like our job, what we do can directly affect that and be an improvement upon that process. And
so you're helping people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then like the passion for people extends specifically to my employees. And I feel like if you take care of employees, they'll take care of the clients.
Yeah.
So it's been a literal dream come true how I've envisioned the company's job in taking care of employees. That's just been off the chart, like rewarding, being able to do that.
That's got to be amazing to think about the positive influence that you can have on 300 people.
Yeah. I have to remind myself because it's almost, I try not to be, but I know it's my tendency to be kind of a set it and forget it type of person. So I've set up the business to, adhere to values and a mission and a vision. And I'm like, my instinct is like, yeah, cool. Okay. Now I'm going to go, do something else. Though I have to remind myself, these people need to be all of the employees, clients, whoever is in my sphere of influence. I get that they need me to just beat the drum. And that's the way I like to.
Yeah. That is what you're talking about is, very common because we think because we said it once or we said it twice that everybody understands.
Until you have toddlers.
Then, and it takes time. I know I had read, and I don't remember where this came from, but this changed how I managed because I had a great deal of frustration when we'd go over stuff and it was like, we just talked about this a week ago and we're not doing, and I had read that the 7th time somebody hears something is the first time they heard it.
Yeah.
And that's when it really sunk into me the value of what you said, beating the drum. You've got to repeat the message, and among other things, in order to make sure that people understand and get that.
It's my job. It just keeps changing in that way. What drum beat am I? What's the rhythm? What's the message? And that it keeps morphing over time. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next question. When you go back and you look at when you started?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the first 3 years, whatever, 4 years. When you started versus today, what's changed with you? Like, work-life harmony, your values, your free time, what your hopes and dreams are today versus that. Like, what's changed? What's different now?
Yeah. I think that there's those first few years I knew were grind years. I put that into perspective. I knew that those were going to be really some grind years. Yet I've always maintained with my employees, very specifically, a work-life balance. So I had employees almost immediately, 6 months after I started the business, and I would see them get overwhelmed, and I experienced that too in the past. So it was really, really, really important to me that I create this work-life balance as the first drumbeat per se.
Right.
And I had to live that. I had to not just preach it, but I had to live it. How has that changed? Things have changed in what is in really where I'm at. It's a very surreal point because I was, again, before I had per se passion for our industry, my goal was to just create financial stability and a future for my family.
There's nothing like being broke that's a good motivator, right?
Right. So like that phase where I'm at now is just different, and I don't have to worry about financial stability anymore. And that's so, for entrepreneurs, just keep up the hard work, because it does pay off. It will pay off. It is something that just accumulates over time. It just happens.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think a good amount of people feel like they're going to, take the risk, start their own business, put a few things on social media, and all their friends and family are going to tell all their friends and family. And pretty soon people are going to, flock to you.
Overnight success.
Yeah. And it doesn't work that way. There's silence for days and weeks and months. Sometimes there, you experience that.
Yeah. So like where I'm at now, I have to clarify to people what my motivation is, because they're looking at me to set the tone, and my motivation isn't that financial stability anymore. It's growth and being altruistic and giving. I know that I think that this is true, and I've asked employees over the years many, many times, what do you want from life? And the central theme is growth. They want either emotional growth, physical growth, whatever growth, perspective people have. I believe that my company and my job is to keep that train moving, is to keep that growth train going.
Yeah.
And I hope that, and at the point that I don't feel like I can, I'll probably find something else that I can infuse that growth kind of mentality. Growth. Now I don't know what that is. Maybe I do. I have some good ideas, but but yeah, I don't believe though that right now Gemini, my company, there's any sort of horizon when it comes to growth. There's no real ceiling for it. And I tell new employees that, like, we're not trying to put the brakes on. We're not even pumping the brakes. Like we're full throttle here, And of course, everything there's nuance to that. But,
sure. But the great part about, if you're an employee working for a company that's growth mindset, growth oriented, and has a track record of doing what they say they're going to do, that easily equates to lots of opportunities for everybody involved. And that's where you want to be. Last thing you want to be is with a stagnant company that's going to just try to maintain. Because maintaining is really just going backwards. Yeah,
I was talking to somebody last week about that. And, you and I as entrepreneurs, we know this, so you can get bored. We can get bored.
Yeah.
I had a really killer job right out of the Air Force working for a company, advanced technology stuff, and they just couldn't keep me busy. I was like, I just can't do this. As cool as this company is, as neat as their product is, they couldn't keep me busy. I just started to implode. I was like, I think I'm going to take half the day off. Like, I got to go. I can't be here anymore.
Yeah. That's another thing is entrepreneurs, leaders are drawn to action.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drawn to action. And I actually remember, this is weird. I had a job when I was in my 20s, and it was a good paying job, a good paying job. I mean, I know people who had I didn't go to college, but I know people that had 4-year degrees that weren't making what I was making. I was so bored. I was so bored. I did the job for about a year. There was about a year's worth of new, it might have been a little bit longer than that, new like learning, and it was challenging. Once I got it all settled and I was good at it, and I knew I could do it well. And with that job, I got paid by what I did, how much I did. And I maximized that in every given hour, and, through efficiencies and systems and processes and all that kind of stuff. And I remember talking to my mother about this, and I was feeling ungrateful at the time. But I was bored. I was bored. And in hindsight, there was nothing wrong with me. It's how I'm wired. But at the time, I felt like, man, why am I not just thankful for this great opportunity? And I am thankful for that opportunity. It helped me buy my first house. It helped me, establish myself, all those types of things. But I couldn't stay there. There's no way.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to accomplish too is build a culture that is focused on thinking as opposed to doing. And not opposed to, but I don't want robots. I want really people to think about their work and examine it and improve it. That is really important to the organization able to grow. And so if I can teach people, it's interesting because leadership, I have employees and executives that are like, just tell me what to do is kind of what they're telling me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, sorry. I need you to kind of figure this out on your own. Let me beat the drum on all the thinking models and all the thinking seeds that you need to figure this out. And let's see what happens. And I've attracted some amazing people because of that. They have the ability to apply what I'm giving them from a principle perspective to their work.
And that's unusual. That's unusual. It really is. I mean, I work with a lot of industries and a lot of places, and with some really wonderful people in the consulting that I do. And I can tell you, the high achievers, the companies and businesses that do the most, grow the most, are ready when the explosive growth happens, are the ones that do exactly that, and they empower people. It might be scary for that individual at first, but it's unusual because you're trusting them.
Yes.
You're putting them in a spot where they have to be creative. Maybe they're not, and you can almost guarantee if they're like deer in the headlights when they're approached with that no one in their history has encouraged them to put their own stamp on things.
And it's a team effort too. It's very team effort. It's like we had part of our story, we doubled in growth in 2022. Massive growth. We had this just massive trajectory. A competitor folded, and a bunch of their employees and almost all of their clients came to us and said, "Hey, are you going to help? Can you help?"
Wow.
And that exactly what you're saying. We gave the success. The reason we had success is that I was adamant that we usher all of our resource, all of our brain power to figure out the problem.
Yeah.
And thankfully, and just amazingly, we didn't lose employees. We didn't lose clients, our existing clients that we've already made promises to.
Wow.
And we've kept and retained, all of these new employees.
And that's not easy when you take something like that on. If people have never gone through it, you may not realize, but you're meshing two different cultures together.
Huge.
The outcome might be similar or maybe even the same, but there's different cultures. When there's different cultures, there's different values on things like quality. There's different, there's just so many differences, one of the big differences that I've seen in that scenario is the value that people place on how they get along, right? Mm-hmm. Like here's an example, and you do this well. I know from talking to you in the past. If you don't have, let's say you mesh two companies together, and one company has a great system and process for how you fight, You get two people in the same room, they're going to disagree on something. So what do you do then? What happens, right? And another company may have nothing at all. And then you mesh those two companies together and you have a period of what could be really crazy chaos because one group of people looks at the other group like, hey, it's obvious. This is what we've always been doing forever. Really, they both look at each other that way, and it can, it can create a lot of wild stuff. And so that's where, you're methodical with a lot of the stuff that you do.
I think it's so, honestly, from day one, as I was hiring people, and those one of the last things I let go of was HR, because I love screening employees.
So let me make sure I understand. You don't have HR right now?
No, we
in
do.
Your organization?
We do. Okay. We got a nice, robust HR team.
Oh, now. Gotcha.
But no, for a long time, I was filtering all the resumes and doing all the interviews and that sort of thing. But I loved it because I'm kind of a human behavior nerd.
Right.
But the one thing from day one that I was really focused on was honesty. And so I would interview very creatively. I would ask them the same question in different ways,
right?
Like 3 or 4 different ways. I tried not to use anybody else's formats. And I would put these roadblocks of truth and honesty, and if they didn't pass the honesty test, it's gone. So I mean, to that point, when we did bring in these amazing people, it was let's be incredibly honest with each other about what this is, and let's start from there. If we could start from there, we can pretty much solve any other problem. And it's kind of the 5 dysfunctions of the team. Lencioni, you start with trust and you build upon that.
Right.
You kind of have to have that foundation.
You think there's anything more important than hiring?
I
mean, you think about it, you hire right.
No.
You prevent a lot of problems.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to argue. I would say, it's a very, 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 very important filter for your company. You're letting in, the inmates.
Yeah.
Are they, are these going to, culture is just incredibly important at Gemini. Really, really important. Behavior, making sure that we have a behavior of mutual respect, just critical. And I always call that kind of our founding core value is respect. Honesty is respect. Truth is respect.
Right.
New employee, hey, look, we need to be honest with each other. And that is the foundational aspect of what respect is.
Yeah, that's you. Yeah. And I'm not downplaying culture because culture is another thing that is incredibly important. It's just when you hire well, when you're good at hiring, you're good at screening, and you take that really seriously, you're preventing turnover, you're preventing cancer, you're preventing, all kinds of stuff just by partnering up with people that make sense.
Yeah, they say things like culture is defined by what you tolerate.
Yeah.
As an example of that.
Yeah. You get what you create and you get what you allow.
Yeah. Right. And behavior expectations, you can't compromise. The company has behavior expectations that says, if you're not respecting your neighbor, bye. I mean, sorry.
But you have policies for that where you clearly define what that looks like, right?
Kind of, yes and no. You don't have to create deep policies if you have a well-defined culture of values. If you have a well-defined culture, the values being the foundation,
right?
If that's well-defined, then it gives people power on how they fire and hire employees,
how they can navigate through it
specifically. Yeah.
But
once I did, it was amazing actually, because I didn't do my core values, my vision, and my mission really in earnest until, I don't know, I had to have been 10 years in business, which is kind of crazy.
Some people never do that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But once I did it, it empowered every employee for every one of their decisions.
That's cool.
It was pretty amazing.
That's cool. I mean, people, they really just want to know what winning and losing looks like.
Yeah.
So if you can define what that looks like, most people are going to go, got it, Dan. And I mean, that's what I want. And when I was an employer, tell me what winning looks like. Tell me what losing looks like. And I'm gonna, you know, I might argue with you about it as we're creating it. And I might challenge you along the way that, you know, there might be a reason to bend this way and that way. But I'm going to follow, and I'm going to drive that to the best of my ability. And I think most people are that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Organizations that do those types of things, I love that. They flourish. The people flourish. Mm-hmm. You know, there's nothing like you know, if the rules are changed all the time.
Yeah.
You know, if winning looks like this quarter, but it looks like that next quarter, then it doesn't take long before people create their own definition of what winning and losing looks like. Right. But they don't usually feel good in that space. You know, they want to share it.
I would say that our core winning is how we treat each other at Gemini. And I mean, sure, I hope entrepreneurs are hearing that. Like, define winning as how you treat one another.
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
And you treat one another, take care of each other, like, and then serve the vision, serve the mission. And man, everybody goes home and you know, what more can you ask for at work?
What's crazy about that is not only is it a better environment to work in where people will show up to work and feel good about being there, it's more efficient.
100%.
You're getting a lot more work done when people get along and you're not arguing and fight. And that's one of the things that I really like. You know, I've talked before. I do DISC personality assessments, and you know, there's other things out there too. It's one of my favorite tools that I've come across for leadership, and one of my favorite things about it, and this kind of fits what you're talking about. One of my favorite things about it is we give each other permission to suck at stuff.
Yes.
And we give each other, hey, is it okay if I take this on? This hits my strength zone.
Yeah.
Right? We're okay with that. We give each other permission to do that. And we do that just through doing DISC assessments. And we go, this person is wired for this type of work.
Right.
And everybody goes, oh, that's why. And there's all, you know, and it's so cool. And there's a lot of other things that lend themselves towards that. But when those light bulb moments go off, now all of a sudden, you know, like the 7 Habits talks about, you're synergizing and working together instead of, oh, I can't tell the boss I'm not good at that, but man, I really hate doing that thing. Now it's like, hey, Dan, dude, let's get, you know, this other person involved because you know this is not my wheelhouse. Right. And it's okay to do that, you know?
Yeah, it's still, I still have difficulty, you know, egos are egos, and they're, you know, as a business owner, I have to be careful about, you know, especially as the boss. They're like, wow, I could really injure somebody, you know, by pointing out their ego, whatever they have pride over, that's not within their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So it's delicate, but you learn. I just was talking to my wife about this. I firmly believe that you can tell anybody anything as long as you do it you could do it in the right way. There's a right way to talk to anybody about
absolutely
anything. And to be honest, like that was a hard thing. We had to work into that. I had to work into that as a boss, as a leader.
Right.
Because I just want harmony. You know, I want people to be happy. And
see, and I'm wired where I call it the 20-pound sledgehammer of truth. I'm wired to where I felt like the truth is a kindness. Mm-hmm. So early in my career, if I saw that somebody, you know, I knew enough to not confront them in public, but I would just tell them straight and direct. Yeah. And for many years, I thought that was helpful. I thought I was helping people because I saw that it would help some people. Yeah. But they were all people who were wired like me, not wired like everybody else. That was one of the problems. Is that
I mean, that's what you've discovered, right? In personality profiling, right? Is that it's just an approach. It's simply like, hey, this person, I have a really important employee to me that they just need me to wade into the short, into the shallow end first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. That's not a problem, right? There are other people I could just hit with a hammer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're fine.
And they're appreciative of it.
Yeah.
Like some people want that, but the gray area. Some people say they want that, but then they don't when it comes down to it. But it's but I like what you said, man, that there, whatever the news is, whatever you need to talk about, that is really important to realize. There is a way to say it in a productive way.
Yeah, it's true. So our personality profiles are awesome, though. We dove into that about 12 years ago, and it's made a huge difference for us. And I use it. I don't even use it as much as I used to. What it did was it calibrated the empathy for me.
Yeah.
To approach anybody, any new person, with a completely blank slate without making assumptions.
Yeah. Well, and to piggyback off of that, here's the thing: the absence of understanding different personalities, is the presence of us judging other people using ourself as a base.
Yeah, totally.
I make up about 3% of the population. Right. That's being wrong a lot.
Yeah.
When I'm doing that. So
yeah, I actually think that's one of my, what I call maturity speed bumps. It's exactly this concept that people don't need to think like I do. They don't need to, and they shouldn't in many, many, many instances. Now, I want to give you some guidance, like, hey, the business has needs, those sorts of things. But for me to make that assumption that you should think like me and that you need to for whatever reason. And again, there's circumstances where that's kind of important. I want you to see things through my eyes, through my perspective, so that you can act the way that I'm asking you to behave and act on this situation. Here's the strategy, et cetera, et cetera. But huge speed bump for me personally from a maturity perspective.
Yeah, that definitely is maturity. And 10 years of doing those types of assessments and things like that is what'll put you in the fast track on those things. Yeah. One of the organizations that I work with, on their office doors, they've got, of course, their name, their title, and their disc type. To remind people, because there's so much confusion that can come from that. Anyway, I didn't necessarily plan on talking that much about disc, but it is such a powerful, that and other personality stuff is such a powerful tool. Like you said, I like what you said, for empathy, because back in the day, for me, when I was giving everybody that 20-pound, sledgehammer of truth, when they reacted negatively, I thought negatively of them.
Yes.
I thought they weren't strong enough to handle it. Like, come on, man. Yeah. It took me a while you called it mature. That's probably a better word than what I was probably called at the time and deserved. But it took me a while to humble myself. That was the problem. I wasn't humbling myself early on to recognize that people are different, and the fact that they react differently isn't wrong.
Yeah.
We can learn from that.
I think we get in a hurry. And we're hustling. The hustlers can recognize this and can identify with this. You're hustling and someone's not coming alongside. They're not, you have to keep pulling them. And you're like, come on, man, come on. How can let's go, right? We got stuff to do. And that slow down, investment in that person, you got to do that calculation. Is it worth it?
Oh yeah.
Are they gonna hear, even if I come at somebody, it doesn't matter if they have a preconceived notion that I maybe have malicious intent. It's probably not worth it for me to bring them along.
Yeah, they got to want it, and they have to be humble enough to work with
and
them.
Trust you, right?
Yeah.
They got to trust that you have their best interest.
Yeah, and unfortunately, not everybody grows up in an environment like I've learned that over the years. Is some people, they grow up in a family environment that indirectly sort of teaches that all people in authority are bad,
right? Which
is very, very unfortunate. If you have a value and you agree with that. Are there a lot of people in leadership that are bad? Yes.
Right.
Yes, there are. There's narcissists. There's, toxic, immature people that make everything about, yes, there are.
It
are
doesn't
there
change,
wonderful people out there? Absolutely.
It doesn't change that we have to work with all people, and the narcissists included, how, and it's my job and it's your job. It's all entrepreneurs' job. You're going to work with people that you don't want to work with.
Right.
You don't want to, but you still have to figure it out.
Got to noodle through it somehow.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I'm kind of interested in this. So 20 years you've been in this business. I'm interested, and you had mentioned that you weren't really passionate about it getting into it. You were passionate about not being broke, which I could totally identify with. Like I was not thinking about passion when I was just trying to pay the bills. What I was thinking about was going to the grocery store and buying food and not worrying about it. I was passionate about putting the gas pump in my car and looking away from the dollar signs and not stressing out about it constantly. Like that was a big passion of mine. What do you like the most about your job right now? 20 years later, you've already gone through the sweat, the blood, the tears, the hours, the agonizing hours, and working for free.
Yeah.
No doubt you put in tons and tons of hours that you didn't get paid directly for. And it took years to get to the spot where you're at. What do you like the most about it right now?
I so much love working with smart people. That's just like, if there's a day that I don't feel like coming to work, when I get to work and I start to interact with people that I've, even handpicked or to choose to be on my team, or people that I've handpicked have chosen these people, I think I'm a little bit of an extrovert in the respect that I get energy off of people. So I'm at work, I'm like, oh yeah, or I'm at the store. I like to chat it up with whoever, but I'm at work for sure. I'm going to chat it up with people. And it just sparks really quickly that passion that I love working with smart people, hiring smart people, working with smart people, because we can get so much done. We can really, really get a lot done. And that's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. Like, we got stuff to do. We got growth. It's that hustler in me. It's like, hey, okay, I see you. I see you're smart. I see that you're humble, hungry, smart. Another, I think, Lancioni thing.
Yep. Ideal team player.
That's right. Humble, hungry, smart. I see those. All right, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
We got something to tackle, something important to deal with.
Yeah, it is so much more fun and so much more rewarding when you're working with a team that works together and synergizes together and are smart and have the talents.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I would take a team of average intelligence people that got along well and understood that value over really smart people that weren't humble.
And I think too, this is a Lancioni thing. It's not book smarts.
Right.
This is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
That's really what he's talking about.
Which is knowing yourself well and knowing other people well.
And that's the basis of how I lead, is I really want to know who I'm working with, and I want them to know who they're working with internally, so we can maximize the result.
I know people ask me what kind of businesses I work with, and I'd say, I'm not for everybody.
Right.
I don't fit everybody, just the businesses that have people in it. That's all. Because it doesn't, I grow leaders, I help entrepreneurs.
Right.
I mean, I come from the blue collar background, and so a lot of times people relate more with that. And I can, be a consultant in those industries more than just, more than coaching. But it's everywhere there's people, man, and that's that's the
people have needs. People have needs, and when you're really helping people, man, that's addicting.
That's my favorite. I love seeing, and I was blessed enough to do this several times in my career, go to different places and different branches and see broken systems and people and frustration, and be able to bring it together, get people to understand each other and work together. That is a lot of fun. And that, like you said, can be addicting. So now the opposite question is next. So you're 20 years into this, again, after all the struggles that you've been through. Nobody loves every single thing about the things that they do. What do you like the least about what you do now?
Well, it's probably similar to what I like the most, and it's maybe the opposite side of that. It's that when people are, for maybe no apparent reason, or something that I, as a business owner, am not like skilled to diagnose or experienced to diagnose, that they bring politics or pettiness to their job.
Yeah.
Dealing with that is really
The drama.
it's kind of a bummer, you know, and I always have faith and I always have hope that those things work themselves out. And I'm always going to put things around, and I'll even focus on it. If I run across somebody that's in this kind of zone, you know, I will almost instinctively start to build shelter around them so that they get all the resources they need really to kind of pull themselves out of that. It's not something that I've literally handpicked my team to not have this, the pettiness, the politics
Right.
in the team, you know? So when I see it gets me wrong, but also it's such a challenge. I think probably though, what I have less control over, that I don't like is working with the state.
Yeah.
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 I have to, I'm president of our trade association. So I have to represent our industry to, state administrations and bureaucrats and administrators. And, the speed of the state is legendary, Brian.
Oh yes.
Legendary.
I've heard the rumors.
So that's probably not one of my favorite things to do. They just, you know, it makes, I'll say it has refined how it has taught me to refine how I approach that entity.
Yeah.
It's very careful, very methodical, very thorough, very progressive, very non-emotional. I've learned, I think everything happens for a reason, and I feel like the experience of working with the state has given me a lot of really positive.
Well, you're going to learn patience.
Yes, patience.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's tough, man. That's tough. Tough nut to crack there.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most unique thing about what you do now? What you get to do now?
I'm really sensitive to the demands of what is needed from me as the founder and CEO of my company. And I think what is unique about the size and the character and the way that the company has grown and what it is right now, what it demands of me, that every day is unique. You know, every day is unique.
Yeah.
I'm learning that, well, probably the biggest part of my job right now is a lot of personality management, talent and personality management, because really I'm empowering the people that I work with all the time to make good decisions, right? So how do I give them framework to make good decisions, to make great decisions? Yeah. So that's, I think, unique for this time in my role.
Yeah, like I said before, that type of stuff is not common, and that's a lot of the stuff that I do, which is going back to what I started open up with and talking about my conversation at lunch. I didn't start out understanding that need. I thought you could just say it once, and certain things were common, and the words common sense are probably one of the more crippling things that we do, because we said it when we say, oh, it's common sense. What we're really saying is, I have an expectation, but I haven't told you what it is.
Very, very true. Very true.
But you're actually defining what your expectations are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really awesome. And I've learned so much from just the conversations that we've had, and stolen some of your stuff that I've shared quite a bit. So it's been really good and refreshing to see. I've seen other businesses do some similar things, but it's not the most common. The most common is making assumptions that certain behaviors are common sense. And if you grew up in a world or in a household where they argued good. I mean, they had a way about them to the end result was good, and they fought for and looked for resolution in their arguments. Then you're more prepared than the rest of the world. because if they're like, that's one of the big ones that if you're not, if you don't have a structure for how to fight, then all the ways of fighting are on the table and arguing, and then that can just create chaos. So how do you disagree? What do you do when, is a big thing. And you have so much structure, you have documents on culture, you have so much, really cool stuff that you set up and work towards and teach, and that's very refreshing,
Yeah, I worked on fighter jets in the Air Force, and it within the biggest bureaucracy in the world, which is the American military. And the way that I think about it is that there's no detail too small, that we need to pay attention to everything. We need to try to pay attention to everything, including our behavior, including our thoughts, including our values.
Yeah.
And I think what happens to most businesses at the stage that I'm at is that they have been able to kind of set it and forget it. And they kind of like, hey, I made it. Had I been wildly successful in the first 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years, we might not even be having this conversation, because I would have been like,
good point.
I'd been like, hey, let's, I would have been at living on the beach or something like that. What I learned through persevering through, we have a really, really tough industry. We get paid by insurance companies. So the people that hire us are the attorneys, but we get paid by the insurance companies. And then we're in a highly regulated industry. We've gone through some enormous trials from a regulatory perspective. And what I believe has made the difference and gotten us through that is our attention to detail. Really, really important that we pay attention to. We really couldn't take any detail for granted. Is basically
and that's that's the industry you're in. Is there are other industries that you could probably be too detailed in, but that's not the one you're in. I mean, you got to pay attention to everything.
Yeah. So, but I think that I do think that owners / the top echelon of the company, if they don't set a tone that detail is important, it just starts to crumble the further you go down.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack and we're almost out of time, but there's a lot to unpack. So we should do this again sometime, because I'd like to another time talk about some of the details of, how do you ingrain culture? Because you have, I mentioned this a little bit ago, but you have a document on culture, and I'd like to have you back to discuss, like, how do you implement that? Because there's a big difference, and I've learned this over and over and over again in my life. There's a big difference between reading something on a paper, reading something in a book, and actually doing it, and then doing it well, and then getting 300 people to do the thing. That by itself is a big thing. But so okay, we open this up. And I was talking about why I started the podcast. And so then I want to kind of go back to that and ask you two questions. One, if you had to give some advice to a 25-year-old entrepreneur right now, what would that advice be? And two, if you could go back in time, sit at a table like this with 25-year-old Dan, what would you tell him? Would it be different?
I'd say overnight success. Overnight success. That's the ticket. That's the ticket. No, I mean the opposite. The opposite. I meditate on what our anniversary is coming up, and it's 20 years, and I know that people are going to, at least one person is going to say, "Well, what have you learned? What has been the one thing that you've learned?" And it's the, I would say it's the compound interest of time. The richness that time and the compound interest of time into a thing generates. That's with relationships. That's with, like, if your hobbies, whatever it's the law of 10,000 hours. You put some 10,000 hours into something and you become theoretically an expert. But even beyond that,
a world-renowned expert at 10,000 hours is the argument.
So if you get to 20,000, 30,000, okay, well, what's beyond being an expert? What's beyond that?
What's next?
And my feeling and what resonates with me is how rich something becomes. deep and nuanced and complicated, but understood. It's like you've been married for a long time. I've been married for a long time. Man, in my opinion, it just gets better every day. Like the relationship, the more the every day is more time into the bucket of me getting to know my wife and my wife getting to know me, and us focusing on our life getting old.
Yeah.
And so that richness just
gets better.
People like, I don't really know. I mean, how do I say this? With lack of commitment, you're only kind of halfway in on the things that you're not committed to. You know what I mean?
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. You got to commit to be all in. Yeah, very powerful. So another little bit more, kind of similar question to what I already asked, but a little bit more defined. You're 25 years old.
Yeah.
You go back to 20. You're sitting at this table with 25-year-old Dan. In the moment that 25-year-old Dan is deciding whether or not to go out on his own, he's got all those fears and those worries and money, which you were when I asked you what advice you'd have for entrepreneurs, money was not part of that concern. It was time. I thought that was interesting. But you're sitting there with Dan, 25 years old.
Relax. Like you have the tools to be above average. Dan, what do you want out of your life? Oh, I just want to be above average. Like if you go to a classroom of kids, like, what do you want from life? And then generally they're going to say, I just want above average. Like they'll shoot for the stars, but if you really get down to it, they'll get to the moon. And I believe that any 25-year-old that has that perspective, that is hungry, humble, and smart.
Yeah.
They're going to be fine.
You'll get
relax.
There. That's good.
Relax.
Yeah.
I made some kind of rash decisions. Everybody does.
Sure.
Early in your career.
You're lucky if it's only some.
Yeah. What do you think about like fighters, for example, when you try to kill all emotion? We've been there. You get into a fight situation, whether it's an argument or whatever, and everything goes away. All of your brilliance that you think you have is like gone because you turn into an a-hole or whatever the case may be. So again, for my 25-year-old self, just relax.
Yeah.
Try to enjoy the moment. Really try to enjoy the moment. That's just, I've been very terrible. That's something I've had to learn later in life, is to enjoy the moment, to be present. That is a huge struggle.
I'm always 2 or 3 steps ahead instead of right where I am. So
and entrepreneurs are good at that. So you're gonna be a few steps ahead, and so take heart in that. Relax, enjoy the moment.
Good. That's good stuff, man. Hey, we covered some really good ground here. Definitely got to have Dan back. And I do want to say thank you for listening and watching episode 30. Get more information on my website about the upcoming other podcasts and my newsletter at algercoaching.com. That's ALGER, algercoaching.com.